Fate. Whether we're talking about the unyielding grip of a predetermined path or the chaotic dance of destiny itself, has always been a captivating topic in literature, philosophy, and even our own lives. In both Reverend Insanity and Lord of the Mysteries, fate is not merely an abstract concept. It's an entity that shapes the lives of characters, driving them to make decisions, challenge their beliefs, and ultimately define their existence. But while both worlds grapple with fate's omnipresence, they do so in drastically different ways. Fate Gu plays a pivotal role in the Gu world, shaping the paths of all living beings and forcing them to follow predetermined fates. As described in Reverend Insanity, Fate Gu represents the essence of fate itself, ensuring that all beings within the Gu world cannot escape their destined paths. Even if individuals take great detours, the world will correct itself, guiding them back to their original paths. When the Red Lotus demon Venerable injured Fate Gu, it caused a profound disruption, leading to chaos in the world as its effects were disturbed. However, as Fate Gu began to recover, the world gradually adjusted itself again, reaffirming the inescapable power of fate that it controls. At a higher level, there is the Heaven's Will, often referred to as the will of heaven and earth. This force operates on a vastly different scale than the individual Gu users. Heaven's will is omnipresent, spanning the entirety of the 5 regions and 9 heavens. It is not a personal enemy or a singular force, but a vast, eternal principle that governs the balance of the world. It represents the will of the universe itself, and its purpose is the maintenance of balance, order, and equilibrium. In this way, it does not act out of malice or personal vendettas, but simply to ensure that the natural state of things is maintained. This duality, the Fate Gu as an individualistic tool versus Heaven's Will as an impersonal, universal force, offers an interesting philosophical parallel. Heaven's will is indifferent to the personal desires or struggles of individuals. It doesn't care about whether someone lives or dies, or whether they succeed or fail. It simply cares about balance. It is a merciless force that treats all living beings as mere pieces in a grand cosmic game, seeking to correct imbalances that threaten the natural order. The way of heaven is to take away surpluses and replenish deficits, constantly aiming for equilibrium. In contrast, the human way is to seek to increase their own surpluses and reduce their deficits. These opposing drives create a conflict between individual will and the universal will, a conflict that is at the core of Fang Yuan's story. As Fang Yuan rises to power and challenges the established order, Heaven's Will counters him, seeing him as a threat to the balance of the world. This is why great figures throughout history, even venerables who have reached the pinnacle of power, ultimately fall under the weight of Heaven's Will. They are targets because their success destabilizes the balance that Heaven's Will seeks to preserve. Moreover, Heaven's Will is persistent and nearly indestructible. Even if one were to destroy a portion of it, another would emerge in its place, maintaining the cosmic balance. This makes it a truly insurmountable force, one that operates across time, space, and the very essence of the universe. Fang Yuan's destruction of Fate Gu is deeply symbolic, marking a radical break from the natural order imposed by Heaven's Will. His act of crushing Fate Gu is the ultimate rejection of fate's limitations. He sees this world as a place constrained by Heaven's Will, a place where beings are pawns in a larger game, bound by the rules that dictate their lives. Fang Yuan's pursuit of ultimate freedom, the freedom to shape his own destiny, is a direct challenge to Heaven's Will and the principle of fate that governs it. Through his actions, he aims to destroy the very shackles that limit all living beings. In this context, the connection between Heaven's Will and Fate Gu becomes evident. Heaven's Will, as the overarching force that ensures balance, treats all beings as pawns within its grand design. It will suppress any entity that dares to challenge the balance of the world, and Fate Gu serves as one of its primary mechanisms of control. While Heaven's Will enforces a larger cosmic order, Fate Gu enforces individual destiny, dictating the courses that beings must follow. The conflict between Fang Yuan's desire for freedom and heaven's will's imposition of fate highlights the irreconcilable difference between human ambition and the indifferent, unyielding force of destiny. The Red Lotus Demon Venerable's plan to entrust fate to everyone takes this theme even further. Unlike heaven's will, which imposes fate on individuals as a form of control, the Red Lotus Demon Venerable's vision was one where everyone could make their own choices free from the constraints of predestination. By fusing fate with luck, Red Lotus makes fate less deterministic and more fluid. Luck is often associated with chance and randomness, and by merging it with fate, the world becomes one where destiny is no longer rigidly controlled, but is intertwined with the uncertainty of chance. This combination introduces the possibility of randomness and unpredictability into the equation, granting individuals more freedom to influence their outcomes depending on their luck. The ultimate consequence of this fusion is that fate can no longer be used by heaven's will. However, Fang Yuan's destruction of Fate Gu and Red Lotus Demon Venerable's plan is not without consequence. The balance that heaven's will seeks to maintain is fragile, and by removing one of its core mechanisms, Fang Yuan risks destabilizing the world further. By attempting to decentralize fate, the Red Lotus Demon Venerable creates a system that could potentially devolve into chaos. Without the stabilizing influence of heaven's will, fate becomes a free-for-all, and the balance that the universe relies upon is threatened. Moving to Lord of the Mysteries, the concept of fate takes a different shape entirely. Rather than an entity like the Fate Gu, fate in this universe is embodied in the chaotic river of fate, a swirling, unpredictable force that is influenced by multiple cosmic entities and the choices of individuals. Unlike the strict, almost mechanical systems in Reverend Insanity, the fate in Lord of the Mysteries is far more chaotic and fluid. The chaotic river of fate is not something that can be controlled or easily manipulated. In fact, it resists being understood in a linear or predictable way. The river of fate flows through the lives of all beings, touching them, changing their course, and yet remaining beyond their understanding. This reflects a more existential view of fate, one in which humans are mere specks in a vast, incomprehensible cosmos. There is no overarching heaven's will imposing a specific order. Rather, fate is a constant state of flux, driven by the intersecting wills of gods, humans, and cosmic forces. This chaos ties into the theme of existentialism, which questions whether life has inherent meaning or if it is up to individuals to create meaning for themselves. In Lord of the Mysteries, characters are constantly grappling with their place within the river of fate, with the possibility of shaping their own futures, while acknowledging that fate itself is not entirely under their control. This reflects a deeper philosophical inquiry into free will versus determinism, but with a focus on how individuals experience fate rather than how it might be manipulated or resisted. For example, Klein, the protagonist, finds himself at the mercy of fate as he stumbles through a world that seems to conspire against him. His journey reflects the existentialist belief that humans are doomed to create meaning in an indifferent, often hostile universe. While he does gain powers that allow him to influence his own path, he never escapes the grasp of the chaotic river, highlighting the philosophical notion that while humans may have agency, they are still subject to forces far beyond their comprehension. The key difference between the two interpretations of fate is the level of control and predictability. In Reverend Insanity, fate is a system that can be understood, manipulated, and controlled by heaven's will. Fate, in this world, is like a complex puzzle, challenging but ultimately solvable. This reflects a more deterministic worldview, where free will is constrained but not entirely extinguished. Fang Yuan's battle is not to escape fate entirely, but to rearrange it in a way that serves his own interests. In contrast, Lord of the Mysteries presents fate as something far more chaotic and uncontrollable. While there are pathways and forces at play, the chaotic river of fate emphasizes the idea that the universe's design is too vast and complex for any individual to master or predict. Fate here is more existential. It flows around the individual, indifferent to their desires and actions. The only real freedom comes from how one reacts to this randomness. Much like how existential philosophers like Jean-Paul Sartre argued that humans are condemned to create their own meaning in a meaningless world. Both Reverend Insanity and Lord of the Mysteries explore the complexities of fate in ways that challenge traditional notions of free will. In Reverend Insanity, fate is an entity to be destroyed and twisted to one's will, representing a world governed by determinism, but also offering the possibility of mastery through knowledge and power. On the other hand, Lord of the Mysteries presents a far more chaotic vision of fate, one that acknowledges the randomness of the universe and the fragility of human control, aligning more with existentialism and the struggle to find meaning in a vast, uncaring cosmos. In the end, these two depictions of fate ask us to consider: can we truly control our destiny, or are we forever bound to the forces that shape us? And perhaps more importantly, what does it mean to live in a world where fate is either a game to be won or a current to be navigated?